Syria? Syria, long viewed as one of the most entrenched Russian and Iranian allies in the Middle East, has recently shown early signs of a cautious reorientation toward the West. Following years of civil war and isolation, the country's new leadership under Ahmed al-Sharaa, who assumed power after the gradual transition away from Bashar al-Assad in late 2024, has begun pursuing diplomatic normalization with Western and Arab states. This shift gained international attention in 2025, when officials in the new administration expressed openness to joining the Abraham Accords, potentially paving the way for formal recognition of Israel and broader regional reintegration. Western powers, while skeptical, have responded with measured engagement, linking the possibility of sanctions relief and reconstruction funding to political reforms and a reduction of Russian and Iranian influence. Syria's overtures toward Western cooperation also reflect growing frustration with Russia, whose focus on Ukraine has reduced its investment and protection in the region. Analysts have even suggested that limited Western security cooperation, particularly counterterrorism coordination and humanitarian logistics, could gradually reemerge. Still, the country faces formidable barriers. Russian troops remain stationed at key military bases, Iranian militias maintain influence, and the humanitarian crisis continues to devastate its population. While these realities constrain any full-scale realignment, Syria's tentative outreach in 2025 marks its first meaningful step in decades toward reconnecting with Western powers, signaling a slow, conditional, but historic opening. Armenia, once part of the Soviet Union, is undergoing one of the most significant pro-Western shifts in its region. For decades, it relied heavily on Russia for defense, trade, and political backing. But that relationship has weakened as trust eroded after Russia failed to provide real support during renewed fighting with Azerbaijan. This disappointment triggered a strategic reorientation, with Armenia seeking closer ties to the United States, the European Union, and Western defense frameworks. The government has formalized new partnerships and allowed expanded European monitoring missions within its territory. Analysts have also discussed the potential for a limited U.S. military presence along the Zangezur corridor, a strategically important route separating Azerbaijan from its exclave and linking Armenia to Iran. While still speculative, such a deployment would mark a major milestone in Armenia's move toward the Western security orbit. Despite these steps, Armenia remains constrained by deep economic and military connections to Russia and by persistent border tensions. Yet the direction is unmistakable. Armenia is redefining its foreign policy identity, reducing dependence on Russia, and aligning increasingly with Western powers. By the end of the decade, it could emerge as the most Western-leaning nation in the South Caucasus. Kazakhstan, once part of the Soviet Union and today the largest country in Central Asia by land area, is making a notable tilt toward Western alignment. On November 6, 2025, Kazakhstan announced it would join the Abraham Accords, a diplomatic initiative originally brokered by the United States to normalize relations between Israel and Muslim-majority states. The move carries significant symbolic weight. As a majority Muslim nation and a geopolitical heavyweight in Central Asia, Kazakhstan's accession signals that the circle of states normalizing with Israel is expanding beyond the Middle East and North Africa. Economically, Kazakhstan has entered into high-value mineral and critical resources deals with the United States and Western partners. For example, a joint venture valued at around $1.1 billion will develop a large tungsten deposit in Kazakhstan, with U.S. financing and involvement announced during the November summit. A memorandum of understanding on critical minerals cooperation was also signed on the same day, underscoring how Kazakhstan's mineral wealth, rare earths, tungsten, and other strategic metals is becoming a pivot for deeper Western economic engagement. Taken together, the diplomatic move with Israel and the economic deals with the U.S. illustrate Kazakhstan's strategic aim, diversifying away from heavy dependence on Russia and China, enhancing Western ties, and redefining its foreign policy identity in a rapidly shifting global order. Morocco. Morocco has become one of the most firmly pro-Western nations in North Africa, pursuing deep political, economic, and security cooperation with the United States and Europe. A pivotal moment came in late 2020 when the United States officially recognized Morocco's sovereignty over Western Sahara in exchange for Morocco's normalization of relations with Israel. This move, part of the broader Abraham Accords framework, marked a major diplomatic victory for Morocco and solidified its position within the Western-aligned camp in the region. Since then, Morocco has expanded military cooperation with the United States, hosted joint exercises, and received advanced Western defense equipment. The country's economy is increasingly tied to Western markets, with strong European investment in renewable energy, automotive production, and trade infrastructure. The United States and Belgium both view Morocco as a crucial partner in counterterrorism, energy security, and regional stability, while Israel's growing technological and agricultural partnerships further anchor Morocco within a Western-oriented network. However, Morocco still faces challenges that temper its full integration with Western institutions. The dispute over Western Sahara continues to generate tension with some European governments, and concerns over press freedom and governance persist. Nonetheless, Morocco's alignment with Western powers is strategic, stable, and long-term, driven by security cooperation economic modernization, and geopolitical recognition of its territorial claims. Moldova. Moldova, another former member of the Soviet Union, has become one of the most determined countries in Eastern Europe to align itself with Western institutions. Its government, led by firmly pro-European leadership, has prioritized integration with the European Union as both an economic and security necessity in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In 2022, Moldova was granted EU candidate status, and by 2024 to 2025, it had advanced reforms in governance, anti-corruption, and energy diversification designed to meet European standards. The country's motivation for turning westward is rooted in its vulnerability. Sandwiched between Ukraine and Romania, Moldova fears both direct and hybrid threats from Russia, including disinformation and political subversion through pro-Russian parties. Western powers, recognizing this fragility, have increased economic aid, energy support, and security cooperation. The EU has deployed advisory missions, and NATO maintains limited cooperation focused on defense modernization and cyber resilience, rather than formal membership. Public sentiment is steadily shifting toward Europe as well, particularly among younger generations. However, Moldova still faces major challenges: dependence on imported energy, the unresolved status of Transnistria, where Russian troops remain stationed, and domestic divisions between pro-Western and pro-Russian blocs. Despite these pressures, Moldova's westward trajectory appears durable. Over the next decade, it is expected to consolidate its role as one of the EU's most likely next members from the post-Soviet region. Uzbekistan, a former Soviet republic, has been steadily repositioning its foreign policy toward greater engagement with Western economies and institutions. In November 2025, Uzbekistan and the United States signed an economic partnership valued at roughly $135 billion, covering sectors such as aviation, critical minerals, infrastructure, energy, IT, and agriculture. Among the agreements, a contract for the supply of U.S. commercial passenger jets involving Boeing and multiple memoranda for U.S. and Uzbek cooperation in critical mineral supply chains, rare earths, mining, and processing. In parallel, Uzbek policy is simplifying travel and business ties. Starting January 1st, 2026, U.S. citizens will be able to enter Uzbekistan without a visa for up to 30 days, part of a decree signed in early November 2025 aimed at enhancing trade, economic, cultural, and humanitarian ties. These developments reflect Uzbekistan's pragmatic shift, leveraging its natural resource base, including critical minerals, opening its economy to Western investment, and reducing travel/visa barriers to invite U.S. business and tourism. At the same time, the country still maintains relations with Russia and China, but the November deal signals a decisive tilt toward Western economic networks. Over the next decade, these moves could deepen Uzbekistan's integration into Western-linked supply chains and institutional frameworks.